office. Right now, though, let me get back to this the immediate issue of what Mike Pence is going to be able to do when he gets to into office and he's able to actually go in and work on legislation. He knows how the system works. I mean, sort of like Joe Biden. Joe Biden should have been able to help Barack Obama far more than he did. Let's find out what they were talking about when they were there. Reporter Jared Halpern from Fox News Radio is with us right now. Jared, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. So Pence has kind of let it be known that they're going to have a pretty aggressive agenda, I believe.
I think we've heard that from a number of Republican leaders that there's a lot they want to try and get done in sort of the first 100 days. Now, House Speaker Paul Ryan, I think, tried to manage expectations just a little bit yesterday when he talked about the legislative process, that, things don't happen, with a snap in Congress, right? You have to get things through committees. You have to get stuff passed. You have to get through the Senate, which can sometimes take a lot longer than getting stuff through the House. So as much as he said they're going to hit the ground running, I do think that there's just a little bit of expectations being managed from, the House Speaker who says that it may be helpful for everybody to learn a little bit about the legislative process as we get a new administration in here.
Is there time in the lame duck session for them to do anything?
Well, they could, but I don't know why President Obama would be inclined to sign a lot of legislation that's part of the Trump agenda. I think what you're going to see happen in the lame duck is really just try and focus exclusively on getting a short-term spending bill passed. They have a government shutdown deadline of December 9th. Yesterday, it was revealed that what Republicans are going to do, at least what leadership would like to do, is pass a short-term extension that gets government funded through March. Sort of gives a little bit of breathing room for the new Congress, the new administration, to then have a big say in how to fund government for the rest of the fiscal year, which ends in September. That's not a universally liked approach. I talked to a few Republicans yesterday who would prefer the lame duck to fund government all the way through September. They say, one, it's going to be harder to do in March to get a big appropriations bill because, as well as the elections were for Republicans, they do have smaller majorities in both the Senate and the House. And beyond that, he said, if we could get some of this stuff done, for instance, appropriations bills all the way through the fiscal year, it would clear the deck for a lot of these other legislative items that the Trump administration wants to do. Now, that being said, it is the Trump administration, at least the transition team, who suggested they would like a shorter spending bill done in the lame duck, so they do get a say. And we heard that from Speaker Ryan as well. He said, listen, the new government has a right to get a say in how money's being spent in fiscal year 2017. So that's probably the big issue, and maybe one of the only issues that Congress is going to have to wrestle in the lame duck as they try and prepare now for what that agenda is going to look like come January.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of interest out there. Do they start with health care reform? That's not, that's easier said than done. Well, a repeal may be fairly simple when you think about the numbers. You still have to replace it with something. You have to figure out a transition. Remember, there are 20 million people enrolled in a federal exchange program. So there's a lot that's going to go into it, and Speaker Ryan spoke a little bit about that process, too.
Yeah, I wondered because President-elect Trump had said they wouldn't repeal it and then work on figuring out how to replace it. It would all happen at the same time, which is...
I think what you're going to see is probably a repeal bill that doesn't take effect for quite some time to give them some room to transition, if that makes sense. So, a repeal effort that takes, effect once, X, Y, or Z happens. That seems to be an approach that we've heard from Republicans in the past. Obviously, they didn't have, a president who was willing to sign that legislation. They will now. I think the question is, will it be enough? Is it exactly what the president-elect wants? The other big issue, of course, is immigration. And I think it's pretty obvious that there are some differences between President-elect Trump and some Republican leaders on what an immigration overhaul should look like.
Right.
Even what border security should look like, whether you talk about fencing or you talk about a wall or you talk about technology that can be used. A lot of these things are still, as much as Republicans are excited to have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, things still sort of have a legislative process. And to your earlier point, I think Vice President-elect Pence is probably going to run a lot of point on that aspect of it, given his relationship, given his sort of legislative background. Remember, he spent 12 years in the U.S. House, and some of those years as chairman in leadership. So he certainly understands. And I thought it was notable as well yesterday that he did not just meet with Republicans, but also had one-on-ones with Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and incoming Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Is she really at risk, Jared? Do you know? I mean, I know that this guy named Tim Ryan's running,
that's a good
right?
Question. So she is going to face a challenge, it seems like now, from Tim Ryan. It would be confusing if he were to win because you would have Speaker Ryan and Minority Leader Ryan.
Speaker Ryan.
But the last time she faced internal challenge was in 2010 after the so-called shellacking, if you remember President Obama calling it that, the midterms, where she lost her speaker's gavel. And she faced a challenge from a member of Congress, not even a member of Congress anymore, Heath Shuler. And he mounted what was supposed to be a very serious challenge to her leadership, and he got 43 votes.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Listen, we'll see. There is certainly a lot of hand-wringing and questions being asked about, what went wrong for Democrats this election. Tim Ryan, being from Ohio, is trying to show that he has some geographical diversity that right now is not in House Democratic leadership. He is obviously younger than Nancy Pelosi. But she has been the leader of this party of House Republicans for an awfully long time, since 2003. Including 4 years as Speaker of the House, and that does not come by accident. That comes with an awful lot of relationship building and loyalty, and so I think it'll be interesting to see what the vote count ends up being, and whether or not, if she really thinks that it's a serious challenge, if she maybe steps aside. There's no indication at this point that it has risen to that level. Watch over the recess. They're out for Thanksgiving. See if you see any members sort of weigh in while they're away, and you start to hear from constituents. That's sometimes a test as well.
Jared Halpern, thanks for your time. Have a good weekend.
Sure thing.
All right, appreciate that.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Has